Hey, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us on the Political Deep Dive this evening. I'm Dave Valente, joined as always by Dan the Man Fishman,
What
Chalky.
is up? As I like to tell everybody, I'd rather have a bottle in front of me than a frontal lobotomy.
There you go. My Lord. So, what is Chalky all about, man?
I have lived in a couple places where I've had nicknames, and in Massachusetts, my good buddy Matt McLaughlin. So Massachusetts, right? Very Catholic, Irish Catholic state. In my posse, there were 3 Matts, 2 Marks, and 2 Johns, and so everybody had a nickname. And even though I was the only Dan, the guy who gave out the nicknames, Matt McLaughlin, said, "You know what? You look like a Chalky." And I've had worse nicknames. And I'm like, I will take that. I'm going to run with that nickname because there's so many worse nicknames you could give me.
I've had
So salute to my old posse back in Massachusetts.
There you go. I've had nicknames from Duke to Moose to nothing. Duke stuck throughout college, but my first stint in college, which I didn't study at. But anyway, so also joining us from Tennessee, AJ Campbell. How you doing, AJ?
I'm doing very well. How are y'all?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for joining
AJ
us.
comes with a built-in nickname because AJ is actually
It's
like a nickname.
nice.
Yeah.
It is. I didn't always go by AJ.
So what does A and J stand for? If you don't mind us asking.
Well, it depends who you ask, but according to my mother, it's Amanda Jones.
Okay.
There you go.
Very, very Southern, very, very sweet.
Were you ever a Mandy?
No, well, I don't think so.
Okay.
There was a correction officer that called me Mander for a long time, and that was weird. But no, I wasn't AJ until I graduated nursing school. And I noticed all my male classmates were getting all the interviews, like when we would just send out masks. And
I like it.
so I thought I would try. And so I switched it to AJ. And damn, if they weren't surprised when a female showed up for the interview.
Well, there you go. Hey, sucks that you had to go that route, but glad it worked.
It's interesting, and it's nice to have like a personal experience. People are like, well, that's not a thing, and I'm like, yeah, it is totally a thing.
And of course, Louis the Liberty Dog is joining us in the background, chill as ever.
Yes.
Woof, 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 woof. Doesn't care.
He is. I don't know. 3 dog night sitting on a pillow. That is my dog, man. He's just like so chill.
There you go. Living with Liberty, Louis the Liberty Dog is the only way to stay safe.
Only way to stay safe. Yes.
Word. So tonight we are talking faith in politics, and when I announced we were going to have this gentleman as our guest, everyone in the chat was just ecstatic about it because everybody loves Hodey Johns. Hodey Johns from We Are Libertarians. How you doing, Hodey?
Hey, doing great. How are you all? Hey, my fellow white people who can't afford LASIK surgery. That's all of us.
All right.
And who can't be excited about that?
There's no way that anybody will put a laser in my eye at this point, you know?
I went with my wife to get she was considering LASIK. She has really bad eyesight, like to the point that they were like, you're at risk for macro degeneration. Your eyes are so bad, et cetera, et cetera. And we were at the place where they do the LASIK surgery for the Boston Celtics and the Boston Red Sox. So really good guys. And they're in there and they said, so, 99% of our patients have no complications. I'm like, how many patients do you see in a week? And they're like 300. I'm like, so 3 patients a week have complications? That is not a reassuring number for me. And we happened to hear a woman in the room next door. She's like, I had to come back in because I can't stop crying. There's something wrong with my eyes. I'm like, yeah, no, we're good. We can live with that.
God.
I am completely unable to grow any amount of facial hair other than this little tuft here. So without glasses, I'm just like a drowned rat. I don't even have eyebrows. I mean, there's no hair on the head either. I mean, I'm gone. So really, I need the glasses. Otherwise, it's just like a stick figure face, just a big circle, 2 dots there.
I think we should talk.
How far can you see with your glasses? Like, if you take your glasses off, how far can you see?
I mean, well, not
yes.
well.
Well,
so I can read the screen. Like from where I am now, I can read your names.
Wow.
Yeah. So
that's pretty good.
I've got at least that. Yeah. So that is my arm length. So I can read an arm length away. Things start to get pretty hazy.
Here's a good one.
Oh,
have you ever had anyone have to find your glasses for you? Like they fell off your bedside table and you had to have someone else find them for you?
I haven't got there yet. I can still
Oh,
find
it's
my
so
own
much fun.
glasses.
It's so
Yeah,
much
I've
fun, and they judge you so harshly.
I have done that, but actually, to that extent, I keep extra emergency pairs of glasses all around all the time, so
Of
that
course you
if I
do.
had to. Now, let me just say, this one you're going to look at it, and you're like, oh, those ones look better. See? No, they look the same.
It's a new Dan. Oh, old Dan. Okay.
Who are
But oh, these are the classics. You'll see why I don't go with these.
Do you have the BCD
Oh,
glasses?
I'm so excited.
Those are my glasses.
Oh, I feel like I want you to announce Cubs games all of a sudden. This is
Exactly right. Because it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're around it. I like the Harry Carey reference.
Thank you.
But those are my glasses.
Seriously
Really.
now, we're going to be talking about the Cubs. Sorry. Nobody else is going to get that except for us. I feel bad.
I should have said middle-aged white people that can't afford LASIK surgery. That's also all for the people on this panel. So
Right.
All right. Well, Hodey, I wanted to have you on because in the last few months, I feel like I'm not especially a religious person, but I also feel like kind of the idea of religion in politics has been attacked rightly or wrongly based on things that have gone on from our government and within the political party at least that I was involved with for a long time. Not sure what everyone else's status with the party is at this point, but just wanted to bring you on and talk about the idea of faith in politics and kind of what's going on in the current political landscape with politics. So for the folks who don't know who you are, kind of give us your background and how you got into the liberty movement.
Awesome. Yeah, kind of important, especially for this discussion. I spout off about a lot of things on Facebook, everything, and Twitter, everything from video games to barbecue to liberty stuff. My actual degree is in theology, and this is so I have begun talking about that more because I've begun participating in my faith a little bit more. I actually have I've left my church, and so therefore I was kind of left on my own because I still believed. I just didn't really like the direction that the church was headed in culturally. We will get to that in a moment. As far as who I am, I'm Hodey Johns. I do a podcast called Enemy of My Enemy on the We're Libertarians Network, where we take left, right, and center libertarian views and talk about similar subjects and kind of we do debates, as well as what's nice is we often have areas of agreement, and it's very pleasant. Everybody on the show is a friend of mine, and so it's good to have an area where people can have different points of views and all agree together. Where I come from, where I started on the liberty journey, as I was a Republican. I was conservative in most things, except I really didn't. What's to say? I wanted the government to be smaller, and I thought the Republicans were actually doing it. And boy, howdy, was I wrong. I found that out when I got to college, that we weren't actually doing a good job of that. So I decided to leave. Well, I didn't really leave so much as I tried to change the Republican Party. And there was this huge movement called the Tea Party. And at the beginning, it was so cool because it was Republicans who were like, hey guys, what if we actually made the economics smaller? And then, actually shrank the size of government. They started calling out the bad actors and the people that didn't actually shrink the size of government. And I was like, that is also very cool. And coming from a guy, I worked on the George W. Bush campaign, and I was as disillusioned as anybody. I thought that was going to be our small government guy. Yes, I'm a dope, but I do learn. And so it takes a few years, but I learned and was like, this is going to be the thing that's actually serious. And the other part of it was they decided to back off with the whole bigotry thing. They were like, this has been an embarrassing thing that we've been tiptoeing around for a long time. We just kind of don't discuss social stuff in the Republican Party because we're not popular. Our point of view on it's not popular, and rightly so. So why don't we just have the correct point of view on it, stop being a jerk to people, have some good diversity here, and we can really bring people in. And I'm looking at this as a strategist, and I'm like, oh my goodness, people who are affected by government and want that to actually be smaller and are sick of the hypocrites, as well as a new, diverse, young, excited crowd. This is going to be awesome. And anybody who knows what the DNC has been doing is very familiar with what the RNC did. And that was take that young, exciting, vibrant movement and squash it underneath their thumb, and challenged our signatures and fought us in court and put forward their candidates, even though our candidates polled better, had more money. They would do everything they could. And I was I was used to be the RNC's favorite kid, right? Like, hey, thanks for helping us fund. Thanks for helping us with the volunteer stuff. You're great. To them just being like, nope, I hate you guys. Like, cast out, cut it off, done. Those who remember the Obama years can remember, why weren't the Republicans much of a threat during that time? That's because we were busy getting squished. The RNC would rather lose with established, bigoted, big government candidates than win with small government, diverse, happy, love one another candidates. And that the fruition has come through fully for the Republican Party. In case you think, oh, this is what radicalized you into the left, the DNC sucks just as bad. And so I knew I couldn't go right or left. And so who was there on the other side but the Libertarian Party? And they were like, hey, we're also about small government. I will admit, I was not familiar with them. I had done a lot of speech and debate, 3-time national speech and debate champ with Liberty University, go Flames, whoop, whoop. And we loved this. It was all, but it was all, there's only two sides in speech and debate, right? Left side, right side. And then I was proud of myself for being able to take the left side or the right side and argue it. There was never this libertarian side. It was just right or left. And so with the libertarians kind of being like, oh, well, who are these guys? I was so indoctrinated with just, these two sides. Libertarian Party showed up. I was like, that sounds like exactly what I want. And are you okay with losing? And I was like, well, I just finished losing. I'm really good at it. So yeah, I'll join the Libertarian Party. We'll get squished a little bit there. And I joined that for a little bit. I've had a touch of falling out kind of culturally from the Libertarian Party, but obviously still the world needs liberty more than ever. There's no squabble that I won't have or won't endure that keeps somebody, if there's somebody who gets to see their kid, if I put my selfish anger, petty rivalry on hold, I'll put that on hold so that somebody can get their kid who smoked a plant out of prison. Absolutely. So I want to see a successful Libertarian Party. I want to see a successful libertarian movement. I've decided that this is less about the Libertarian Party, because that's a subject that's been talked about to death, and more about my increased success having a cultural battle here in Ogden, Utah, and doing it at the local level, because I think that's how culture gets fixed. Social media is just kind of a yelling ground, and I love to yell too. I mean, it's fun, social media, but making the actual changes and developing connections within the community. And we've seen some real changes here. It's just the start, but this is something I'm actually good at, which is like versus, the political stuff, which, like I said, really great at losing. Maybe that should have been a heads up that you're not very good at what you're doing currently, Hodey. Go do something else. And so I'm happily doing something else. When I talk about the culture, obviously my faith being a Christian, I got the general studies in theology, Bachelor of Science, which means I studied a little bit of a bunch of different faiths. So I know just enough that if you've attended your church for more than 5 years, you know more than I do by a lot. But I know it about a lot of different faiths. So I can pick a little bit here and there. Ultimately, I've decided on Christianity after bouncing around with a few different faiths. But yeah, that's how I ended up where I am.
Do you have a flavor of Christianity that you would describe yourself as?
No, and that's kind of the big deal right now. Is I was Mormon. I've been Protestant. Specifically, I've been Presbyterian. I went to a Lutheran church for a little while, and I visited a ton. I mean, I studied with the Krishnas, and I remember my time well at the Buddhist temple. But as far as like myself goes, I bounced from atheism and then to a bunch of other faiths.
Would you say that you are a Trinity person?
I believe that they are three distinct pieces.
Okay.
There you go. But
Fair enough.
I also don't think that, for me, that like this tends to make a lot of Christians fight. If they all end up being one when I get to heaven, I'm not going to be like, oh my gosh, I'm in trouble. I'm screwed. You know, I think it's just one of those, oh, if they're three separate entities or if they're one, then nah.
Fair enough. And I'm not saying there's a right answer or a wrong answer.
Sure.
I think that's just sort of, you know, for a lot of people, for a non-Christian, that's sort of like the things that I'm interested in. And then we already had the faith versus deeds conversation, which I thought you answered very eloquently. If I can summarize it,
Sure.
Hodey says, do the best that you can, and that will always be appreciated.
Yeah. You know what? Thank goodness that God gets to judge and not me. And he wants to do the judging, and I don't. So when people are like, am I going to go to heaven? Am I going to? No, I don't want to do that. Like, I have theories, and we talked about this a little bit, and ideas from my reading of the scriptures, which are pretty positive, I think. But obviously, I am demanded not to judge. Not judging is the largest purported negative commandment in the entire scriptures. So it's really requested and reaffirmed to me that I not judge. Christ is 3 times asked, how do we get into heaven? And 3 times says, don't judge people, and uses some variation of that story of not judging people. So I appreciate that people want to be able to judge who's going to heaven or hell, but because I don't want to go to hell, should there be one, I will not judge whether you're going to heaven or hell, so that I don't go to hell.
Fair enough.
There you go.
AJ, did you have something?
Oh, I like the safeguards in that. No, that's the Christianity that I grew up with. My grandfather was a Baptist preacher, actually, and not he wasn't a hellfire and brimstone Baptist preacher. He was never that guy. He was always Jesus is love. And yeah, she's sinning, but it's okay because we're gonna make sure that her kids have clothes this winter or whatever it is. And I was the youngest, so I don't know. I feel like by the time I had grown up, everybody was a little tired. And I had a little bit more lax of a childhood than everybody else did. So yeah, I got tattoos and I dyed my hair and I got my belly button pierced. And Granny and Grandpa were, I love you anyway. You know, they were those Christians. Now, granted, they were also, you know, Southern Christians, so they probably talked behind my back, but they loved me anyway. And if I needed something, they were there anyway. So I love that, Hodey. Thank you.
Oh yeah, of course. Sound like amazing people. What's funny is we need more fire and brimstone preachers who don't actually talk about fire and brimstone. That style, that the Lord is coming, like, it's such an awesome style, and we need it to come back, but we need them to kind of have a little change about their focus, right? Most of them are entirely entrenched in politics. That's what brings my parents here today, and not spirituality. And a lot of people talk about the separation of church and state because they want to protect their politics. I talk about the separation of church and state because I want to protect my faith, my church. I do not want politics infects everything. What good idea isn't made perverse under politics? Welfare, great idea. Politics screws it all up, you know, and capitalism, good idea. Politics trying to do capitalism totally sucks, right? Like, and take anything and add politics to it, and it's bad. And so when politics comes into church, that's when things get sick. That's when then people, and it's an infectious thing, you know. And when you see somebody preaching from the pulpit that is telling you what to believe politically, that is coming as though it were coming from God's mouth. Christ was notoriously, I think what's funny is many would label him an anarchist, but I would say he's almost like an a-governmental being. Government in his mind almost didn't exist. Like, the idea, like, he had to be confronted with it and being like, well, what do we do, master, in this situation? He's like, well, I'm not really talking about that. I'm talking about living my life and healing people and building communities. And you're all up in my grill here, and you want to talk about what do we do with Rome and what do we do with the emperor? He's like, yeah, I ignore him. They shouldn't affect me.
It's time for the render under Caesar quote.
Yes. Yeah. Let him have this currency. Your currency is not this currency. You do your own. You know, this is I exist in a separate, you know, a separate entity other than government. And so what religion really should do is teach you spiritually. And then if you have to do something politically, allow that to guide you. Right? Like to say, okay, I have been taught to love my neighbor, and knowing that I need to love my neighbor, will that change what I do in the voting booth? Of course it will, but I don't need to tell you how to vote to do that. All I need to tell you is you love your neighbor. You don't steal from your neighbor. You don't hurt your neighbor. And if I have a proposition that says hurt your neighbor, allow me to make that decision.
So, Hodey, one more kind of personal question for you before we get too far deeper into the political aspect is, so how did you find your religious calling? Was it something that you had from an early age, or is this something that you came into as you got into college, or how did that come about?
You know, I will admit I had a very early fascination with it. My dad wasn't super religious. My mom would take us to church when, every so often. But she gave me a picture Bible when I was young, and I read the entire thing. Gosh, I must have been, and this is a picture Bible, so it's mostly pictures. I want to stress that. I didn't read the Bible when I was 5, but even before elementary school, when I was learning to read, I went through a picture Bible, and then well before I graduated elementary school, I had read the entire actual Bible. I believe I read the Good News version first. And of course, at that young age, I wasn't aware there was different versions floating around, but so be it. It was close enough. And so we read that, and that's kind of where the fascination came from. I bounced around in college a lot. I started as an English major at the University of Northern Colorado, and I actually left to become a paramedic. I have a paramedic 2 license. I've let it lapse. I would need to do the whole courses and anything. So before you get too excited, everybody, it's been a while. I look at the gizmos they have now, and I'm just like, oh wow. I think there was only 4 drugs we were even allowed to administer as a paramedic, and now there's like 20 or something. I would need a lot of new certifications. But I did that for just a little bit. I found out graveyard shifts at the hospital as a paramedic too pay you about what they pay to take movie stubs, and it's a lot more fun to take movie stubs, just flat out. So I didn't do any of that. I dropped out, and I was like, I still have all the scholarship money. So I was getting paid on scholarship. I did a writing contest. I actually got to space camp as well with the scholarship that I had. It was a lot of fun, but it was sitting around. I was like, I still have 20,000 of this. Where's some place I can go 20,000? Liberty University showed up. They got a lot of problems. If anybody know the Falwells, it's founded by them. But
that's why I'm not in the Republican Party anymore.
Yeah.
Jerry Falwell convinced me in 1982 there was no place for somebody with the last name of Fishman.
Oh, yeah. So he founded a great college for speech and debate. I will say it was very important to Falwell Sr. that the college be differentiated from his faith. So when I studied something like Islam, I actually would go to a Muslim person to learn from it, as opposed to just let me as a evangelical Christian tell you about Islam. And I really appreciated that. It really changed a lot of the ways that I looked at a bunch of these different faiths. And so where I found my faith personally, I took a course on restoration. And that's actually where we get a lot of our almost maybe it's too much to say all, but virtually all of Christian denomination comes down to, is the church restored yet? If not, what should we do in the meantime? If it is, which is the right church? And then from there, you just get a bunch of everything, right? So for me, that really opened my eyes that's why there were all these different churches out there. Some thought that this was acting with the name of God. This is the church. I felt at the time, specifically because there's this, by their works ye shall know them verse. And so I said, well, the Mormons do an awful lot of good stuff. They're really nice. Everybody knows this about them. They'll take care of you. So this must mean that they're the right church. I've since come to realize that just because you do some things right doesn't erase some of the things that you do wrong. And I because as a libertarian and an individualist, most importantly, I can't let, that's just one individual. Well, that's Jesus loves the little children. He loves all of them. And so if it's one little children, I'm not going to swallow it and just pretend it didn't happen until this church fix it. I understand that people are flawed, of course. And so I'm not expecting a perfect church, but when there's a systemic issue that shouldn't be kind of happening. And I'm reminded, of course, that who were Christ's biggest enemies when he was alive? Well, it was believers.
Pharisees, lawyers.
Pharisees, yeah. Lawyers and Pharisees, right? And the bureaucracy of it all. And the people who were believers. And so for me, I don't feel bad criticizing what I see Christians doing, because those were also Christ's biggest, that was his biggest roadblock. I don't have a problem with atheists, because atheists can't mess up my faith. I don't have a problem with Muslims. Muslims can't mess up my faith. I got a problem with Westboro Baptist. That can mess up my faith. I got a problem with Jeremiah Wright. He can mess up my faith, right? So there's left-leaning, right-leaning examples of this, of people who can really mess up your faith by teaching the wrong things from the pulpit. And I don't want to just, similar to Christ, I don't want to make them my focus. I want them to come to me if they have a problem, right? Christ, because he was healing and doing the right thing, became such an issue that people had to come to him. That's kind of what I'm trying to do right now. So as far as where that's kind of how I arrived to where I was at now. And I've explored a little bit. I am actually still open to exploring. I have a friend who has encouraged me, because of these discussions, to go to an Episcopal church. I'm going to go with her soon, and so that should be fun. And so I'm still open to searching. That being said, I'm kind of in a place where what matters is your relationship with God. This is a whole separate long issue, so I'll give you guys a break in between here. But what matters is my personal relationship with God more than any church or collective. Because if I'm doing all right, the fruits of that when we're referred to each as individual seeds, right? We plant the right seed, we're in the right place, we produce good fruit. I'm working on my own fruit being good before I find an orchard of trees that are also producing good fruit.
You hit on a couple of points that I like. One of them is, the inconsistencies in the text. One of the things that was sort of astonishing to me is that all the Judeo-Christian sects have different versions of the 10 Commandments. And you'd think that would be something that everybody could agree upon, right? There were 10 commandments. They are these 10. But no, they're different. Like the one I learned in school was, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt to be your God. You shall have no other gods before me. For most Christians, you shall have no other gods before me is included in the second part, along with idols. And it's fascinating to me that, here we have this thing that is, arguably the fundamental tenet, and different interpretations, different rules. And I always thought that the best lesson that came out of religion, and my path, I grew up Jewish, didn't really stick. God clearly wanted me to eat bacon. He could not have said that to me more clearly. But then I felt like, I was an atheist for a while just to be a rebel. And then, puberty in high school, I could not deny the divinity of the female form in a sundress. I mean, even this day, there's something there. And I'm like, well, that's divine. That's clearly divine. And so, but to that end, I'm always astonished by the people who don't get that part of it, who don't get that the diversity of religion is part of the miracle. The fact that, there's something there that, and for atheists or other people, but there's something there that rings people's bell, that makes them think, you know what? There's a larger purpose here than just living for myself.
It's what you bring up. This is a perfect segue into the next point. One of, I think, the most important verses in all of the scriptures is it's not even a parable, it's just a question, but with the ox and the mire. So the Pharisees approach Jesus and they're like, you are healing on the Sabbath. That's healing on Sunday, and that's against the rules. And he's like, all right, you're right. That's against the rules. So which one of you guys, if you had an ox in the mire or an ox in a pit and it was drowning, if it was the Sabbath, would you just say, oh, it's the Sabbath, sorry, ox, you're dead meat? All of them.
No pun intended.
Yeah, dead meat, literally. Yeah. The barbecue guy in me appreciates this.
That's what happened.
I was like, this is actually very fortuitous. Maybe I would let it drown and then we could have meat on the way home. Anyway, but the issue is that they all silently were like, yeah, we would all save the ox, because letting an animal drown is messed up, right? But that directly contradicts the law of God, what is written, right? So that's one of many instances. This goes back to the Old Testament. Many people are like, well, Christ threw out a bunch of stuff that was in the Old Testament, and he just decided to redo it his own way. The Old Testament God frequently throws out those laws that you get in Leviticus and Deuteronomy, and it's like, well, and Numbers. And it's like, well, okay, so was that law not written by God? That's a whole separate subject. I don't believe it was, but I won't get into that. The issue is that personal revelation trumps all laws, including God's laws. And that is from the mouth of Jesus Christ. So you take for example, the spy in Jericho, and they're like, hey, I know we're supposed to kill everybody, but can we save her? And God's like, save her family, save all the innocent. What is this policy of you murdering everybody, this genocidal policy? And it's like, okay, well, maybe you guys should have read into that, because there's a lot of believers that felt that you were the one that this came from, as opposed to the Levites that were speaking on your behalf. And they said, oh, you execute all the believers. And what they did is they had a crisis of conscience. And they were like, well, I don't want to kill somebody that helped me. That seems really messed up. But by the law, I'm supposed to. And God intervenes, and he's going, what are you doing? Your conscience is telling you something rather important right now. Don't do that. Hosea marrying the prostitute. Oh, you're not supposed to marry a prostitute. God actually commands him to do it so that he can teach him a lesson. So these are Old Testament examples of God just being like, that law is stupid. And then, of course, we get to Jesus, who very frequently says, and I mean, Peter, and this is once again God, but Peter with the vision of the kosher law. And it's not, oh, it's okay now, Peter. It's, that law was dumb. I don't know why you made it. Nothing that I made clean is unclean. And that's it. It's not things have changed. I think Christians try to explain away a lot of this stuff. It's people made laws, and then God was like, that's not the way to run a business. You mentioned the Old Testament or the 10 Commandments, Dan, and I'm glad you did, because the 10 Commandments took a lot of push and pull to get from God. God did not want to deliver those laws, because he said, you're going to take them to extremes. You're going to make this all about this, and you're going to stop listening to your conscience. You read the Old Testament. Why were the Jews wandering in the desert for so long? The reason? Because they were relying on laws and not on conscience. It's very explicitly stated this way. So we're even told among God's laws to say, I don't know about that. My conscience tells me otherwise. And in the current climate, we've completely lost that the Bible is a love letter written by somebody who is a writer. And we're supposed to fall in love with the writer and not the letter, because people will mess with a letter. They cannot touch an immortal, awesome God. They can touch something that I wrote down that he told me.
And I think you hit on one of the really important parts too, that there's a lot of commentary that is really important. And so, there's the books, the 5 books of the Torah, all that stuff. But then one of the seminal figures in Judaism is a guy named Hillel, who first established the golden rule. And it's important to say too, people talk about the Judeo-Christian golden rule. They're not actually quite the same thing. The Jewish iteration of it is, do not do unto others that which is hateful to you. And the Christian version is, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Those are slightly different interpretations. But one of the most famous stories about Hillel is that he is teaching in the synagogue on the Sabbath, and there's this poor kid who can't afford to be in religious school, but he wants to learn and study. And so he crawls up on the skylight, crawls up on the roof, and he looks in through the skylight. But it's really cold, and he falls unconscious and then blocks the skylight. Everybody notices the darkness, and they go up and they bring the body down, and Hillel says, make a fire. And all the students are like, it's Sabbath. We're not allowed to make a fire. He's like, dude, this guy's dying. Make a fire. And I always thought, that's a really important lesson, is that, there's this commentary later on of people how to live with the immortal. And then I sort of have to tell a joke from the Kabbalah. For the people who don't know, Kabbalah is sort of Jewish mysticism. It's the collection of writings that are older than, you know, the original Jewish documents, which are, you know, about 5,000 years old. And so there's this story about God is going out and looking for his chosen people. And he finds these people wandering in the desert. And the first group he comes upon, they're prosperous. They've got everything going on. He's like, I would like for you guys to be my people. And they say, really? Is there any kind of catch or anything? He's like, well, I got these rules. And like what? And he's like, well, rule number 4 is remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. Like, oh, we go bowling on Saturdays, and so we can't be your people. I'm sorry. So then he finds a second group, and they're not quite as prosperous, but you know they're supporting themselves, good looking. He says, you know, guys, I would like for you to be my people. And they're like, really? Is there any catch? He's like, well, I've got these rules. Really? Like what rules? Well, rule number 7 is thou shalt not commit adultery. Like, oh, sorry, we are big into adultery. We can't be your people. So then he finds this group of people, and they are starving, wandering in the desert, bedraggled, nothing really going for them at all. And he says, I would like for you to be my people. Yes, we'll do it. It's like, there's a catch. It's like, we don't care. We're desperate. He's like, you're going to be responsible for doing good deeds, and there's no reward. We don't care. We're desperate. And that is the story in the Kabbalah about how the Jews became the chosen people. And it's meant to be a lesson that it wasn't through any virtue. It wasn't through any skill or anything like that. It was actually desperation. And then the important part about it is that part of being the chosen people doesn't mean that you're chosen for anything special or anything like that. It means that you got KP duty. You're the people who are responsible for cleaning stuff up all the time. You're the ones who are responsible for making sure the earth is taken care of. And there's nothing special about that. And I always liked that part of it. And then, you know, Christianity has the same idea of, you know, we're out there to do the good things amongst the people. You know, we're not out there to be vain. We're not out there to accumulate rewards. And I would argue that most religions have this idea fundamentally of service being the nature of religion as opposed to anything else. There is nothing holier that you can do than to serve humanity, because humanity is the ultimate of the creations.
So your comments about the 10 Commandments, it kind of mirrors, when you think about it, the fight over the Bill of Rights. That some didn't want to enumerate the Bill of enumerate rights because they thought that it would end up getting shot up like it has been. Some wanted them enumerated so that you know, it points out when your government becomes tyrannical. These are the guideposts that tell you your government is becoming tyrannical. But it does kind of mirror that debate when you think about it. So let's talk about the evangelical movement. One of the people I worked with in Georgia, I'm much like you. I was a Republican for a long time in the late 90s, early 2000s. One of the people I worked with was one Ralph Reed, former executive director of the Christian Coalition. He was running for the state chair of Georgia, Republican Party chair, which he did win at that point. But the rise of evangelicalism, do you think that gives the rest of Christians a bad name when it comes to politics? Like when people think of politics and religion, that the evangelical movement has really kind of soured people on the idea of people of political people of faith getting involved in politics?
Yes. Short answer, yes. Long answer, yes. It's when you have a culture that you allow to become sick, or that you allow to try and say authoritative things on politics, then people will associate with that. There's no, you know, our brains do something psychologically. We try to assess patterns as quickly as possible. This is actually a strong way of how they measure intelligence for those who take the tests, is how quickly do you pick up on patterns. So if I say 1, 2, 4 blank, One of you guys is going to know the answer. Good job, Dan. Is the smartest statistically. I proved it, right? And so the thing is if I get, and now let's talk about how this can work against us. If I get stiffed by 3 black people and am tipped by 3 white people, and then a black person comes in, will I want to serve that person, or do I want my neighbor to serve that person, my coworker? Okay, so then all of a sudden, my brain, through matter of intellect, is doing a very terrible racist thing, because that's how I measure intelligence. I picked up a pattern. I picked up on it really quickly. This works against the Christians big time. If I've met 3 Christians and they are terrible, awful, judgmental, backbiting people, and then I meet one Hodey Johns who says all that stuff is bad, well, I'm sorry. My established pattern here is I'm not going to treat you differently. I've been trained to deal with these Christians. I have to deal with these Christians. So when you come up here, and this is honestly the reason why we have language at all, is to label general things, right? So if I say being a Christian has to mean something. If Christianity is bad, then I could yell in the wind all day, no, Christianity is really good. But in reality, I should probably just stop calling myself a Christian, because language evolves on its own. I don't get to decide that, right? It does. And I mean, there are people right now. I am an admitted capitalist, but capitalism is in such a dark place right now, and people, what they think of isn't capitalist. Why would I go through that whole process of calling myself a capitalist and then undoing all the layers of what people think capitalism is to actually explain what I actually believe, instead of just saying, you know what, I believe that people are entitled to the fruits of their labor, the tools of their labor, and the product. I mean, let me just make it real simple, right? So I find now, as a Christian, if I say I'm a Christian, that is not helpful to a good chunk of the population. And that's a very bad thing, because when we talk about it, they're going to judge me like that, whether I like it or not. And so if you don't actively work on your culture doesn't cease to exist. It will continue on. It will just continue on without your good influence. So it's important as Christians to kind of hold the standard there. Go ahead, Dan.
I was going to say, I think that's one of the interesting things about it, is that you hear a lot of people questioning, how can you be Christian and believe in sex outside of marriage? That's one of the big ones that, I certainly heard a lot in a boarding school of, and I know that it's not premarital sex. It's all sex outside of marriage that is condemned. And that's one of those things about it is, the problem with, as you said, laws, is that once you start to pick and choose the laws, then you get into trouble, as opposed to, and it's not Christianity or Judaism or any other, or just Islam. All the religions have that issue, as you point out, is that if you are a strict adherent of the law, as long as you believe that there are laws that are followed, then people are going to end up breaking them, or picking and choosing, or saying, well, you know what, shellfish isn't that bad, whatever are the rules people want to issue. I mean, my thing about bacon, all that stuff. But it is interesting to me when people define themselves as a religion that does specifically adhere to rules. So, again, growing up in not growing up, but spending a lot of time in Massachusetts, I had a lot of friends who called themselves Catholic. I'm like, okay, that's different than everything else. Catholics have very strong sense of rules about birth control, about premarital sex outside of wedlock, about, prior to this last pope, about homosexuality. I'm like, how can you call yourself a Catholic and yet have all these things here? Aren't you actually supporting the Catholic institution by defining yourself as that? Whereas you could be, Episcopalian or whatever. I believe Episcopalians not only embrace homosexuality, but allow gay members to become clergy.
Yep.
So, it's a fascinating thing. Why would people who essentially practice a thing call themselves, I don't know. It's weird. I remember doing, if you grow up Jewish, you have to do a lot of comparative religion studies. Essentially, the idea in most Jewish temples is that we're going to try to persuade you to be in another religion. We don't want you unless you're really convinced. And so we did a lot of, Calvinism, transubstantiation, all that stuff. And I mean, they convinced me. I didn't stay, but it's always fascinating to me that, you know, these little, the focus on the minutia. And to go back to what Dave said about politics and the Constitution, you know, I think a lot about George Mason and the anti-constitutionalists, you know, the guys who did not want to ratify the Constitution because of a variety of different reasons. George Mason thought the Second Amendment was a disaster. It's like, that's nowhere near a strong enough defense of our right to carry guns. It's like, besides, people are going to get that comma confused as they, you know, he may not have said that, but that sort of thing, you know, that battling over a formative document as opposed to a general institution.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. When we talk about what we want people to do, I want people to reflexively advocate for liberty in the same way I want them to reflexively be good people, because I think those are the same thing. I think advocating for a person to control their own life is the best thing you can morally do. And so I find those things so inextricably tied together that I don't really care where people's religion is, but their concept of spirituality and the connection of the way that we belong to each other. You know, right? One of the very first quotes, "Am I my brother's keeper?" We are, to some extent. There is an idea that we are bound to each other through this common human experience, and that is a lot of what I think we're supposed to get out of the books.
Yeah, faith is one of those things that it's an additional responsibility. You're not required to be a religious person. So it's for the people that say, you know, there's a lot of the libertarians that are like, well, that's not my problem. That's not my problem. Faith, especially Christianity, is supposed to be for the people who say, no, that is my problem. People getting hurt over there are my problem. And I want that to be my problem. And I want to take care of it. That's my brother. That's my sister. We are all siblings in Christ. I'm going to take care of it. And that is not the culture in the church right now. Right. I think it's very difficult to find a church where that is. Dan, you mentioned, as much as people love to talk down if you don't believe, you're not going to be saved. Okay, well, I mentioned before when the apostles approached Christ, he said, "Don't judge people. That's the top way, right? The stick that you use to measure others, it's going to get used to measure you. How many times do you want to be forgiven? That's how many times you're going to forgive everybody else. Don't judge them, forgive them, let them do their own thing." Not only that, there are 2 parables in which a non-believer goes to heaven in the parable, and then there's the murderer on the cross, who Christ just says, "Yeah, you're going to be with me in paradise." And then there's the believer who says, "I gave all my possessions," but he actually held back 1%. Boom, struck down, killed on the spot, right? By God, because he lied. And we're like, whoa, okay, so maybe I have the wrong view of it. If me being a Christian, giving away 99% of my stuff, but telling a lie gets me condemned, but killing somebody and then going, I really screwed up, gets me saved. You know, and this is scriptural fact. But I think the thing is one of the things as I walked away from the church, people think, well, you know, you walk away from that formative document. And as I said before, people can mess with the letter, right? I'm still in love with God. The letter is simply a letter that God wrote, and I'm trying my best to interpret it correctly as much as I can. But God is love. Love is the thing that I tap into. If I am practicing love, I am worshiping God. They are indistinguishable if God is love. So if I am being patient, kind, not boasting, all those things that love is, then I am effectively serving God. The Good Samaritan, the Samaritan was not Jewish, right? Like, this is important, right? And then he says, who's the guy that you think is going to go to heaven? That's the way it's going to be, right? So this whole idea that Christians have, that it's our way or the highway, is refuted both in the Old, and in fact, more times in the Old Testament, but often in the New Testament. And so, but it's this culture that sneaks up on you. If you don't snap it and you don't say, that's not the way it is, it sneaks up on you. Simon Magus, it's talked about in the book of Acts, was preaching that Christ was a sinner and he was just some guy. And like, he was a charlatan, right? He was selling fake stuff. And the apostles had to be like, nope, that guy's not one of our guys, right? And it doesn't take much more than that to just be like, nope, that's not us, right? A lot of Christians hear Westboro Baptist Church and be like, well, I can see where they're coming from. No, the answer is nope. Those aren't our guys. Because if you don't want to be associated with that, I mean, in Christians, if you're a Christian listening to this, doesn't the guilt by association suck? So if you want it to stop, you need to cease the associations. You need to say no, and definitively no. You can say, I still love the Westboro Baptist Church and the members. I still hope for the best of them. But what they are doing is wrong. I mean, and Jeremiah Wright, exact same issue, right? I don't want to make this a left or a right thing because there are a lot of churches right now that are injecting left and right politics. The righties have kind of gone nutso lately, especially with like the Patriot Prayer and all that stuff. So that's probably the most like obvious example of like cringe to the maximum, like when you hear people reciting in mass this Patriot Prayer. But I mean, some of the left churches, you got to check in on your friends because they will very quickly just be like, God wants you to vote for Joe Biden. And you're like, oh, okay.
Let's talk about, I mean, to me, there are a lot of parallels between what we're seeing within the church and what we've seen recently within the Libertarian Party, where it seems like we've gotten far too dogmatic with the laws and the scripture of, whether it be Rothbard or, Ron Paul or whoever, and we're ignoring the people and not making it a movement that takes care of people, and that's driven out a lot of people.
No doubt. When we talk about philosophy and ideology, people want to, I think because this is a very Western mentality, by the way, is that we are very like, okay, what do I have to do that makes me that thing? So if I go to church on Sunday, I'm a Christian. If I go to, the tabernacle, then if I go to the mosque, then I'm Muslim. If I go to the synagogue, I'm Jewish. And so we want a checklist. We love checklists, especially with Christians. Oh, have you're faithful to you don't commit adultery. You follow the 10 Commandments. You do these things, right? This is not what a philosophy is. Those are just rules, right? And it's good to have some self-governance, right? Like we should set boundaries for ourselves. I love when I set goals because they should be measured, they should be direct, and you hit them and you get that chance to celebrate when you hit your goals. That's fantastic. This is not necessarily being against rules, but the rules don't make you this thing, right? Like simply following a set of rules isn't what makes you a libertarian because I believe in X, Y, and Z. Individualism, believing that every individual has an intrinsic value and you care about them, that makes you a libertarian, right? And so it's an identity. So for Christianity, it's not, did I go to church on Sunday? Did I follow X, Y, and Z laws? It's, do I have the light of Christ in me? And do I listen to that conscience? Do I have that relationship? And so libertarianism, exactly the same. Libertarianism is a philosophy, and just that way, it's a mentality, not a set of rules. People want to know, as a libertarian, I think this on this issue, and that is fine. But the most important thing is that you say, what makes me a libertarian? And it's a philosophical question. It's an identity question. It's not a set of rules. So people want to say libertarians believe XYZ, libertarians don't believe XYZ. That's not really how it works. Libertarians believe in individualism. Now, sometimes, like for example, libertarians are not anti-government. Government messes up our stuff. And so we become anti-government, but that is only because of our love of freedom and liberty. And this is especially for the Libertarian Party, this is very important. Christ was not anti-Satan. Satan is the antichrist, right? We have an antichrist. Why is Christ not anti-Satan? Because being against something is not an identity. That's not a thing. That's just, I don't like them. The Republican Party being like, no, we're just, own the libs. We hate the Democrats. Well, they've lost their identity, right? They have no idea anymore. We're just not them. We're not woke. We're not whatever they're doing over there.
Right. And of course, the opposite of woke is asleep. So if you say you're not woke, you are asleep.
Yes.
But that, that idea of a forgiveness concept that people are missing out on is such a lack of understanding of everything else that's written in almost every holy document. The whole point of the idea of a creator who is in many ways incomprehensible to us because we can't understand the ability to create, but did achieve creation, and then would be so small-minded to say, well, I made you this way and I put all these circumstances in your path, and then you did this bad thing, and so I'm going to condemn you for it. It's entrapment, right? And I don't believe in entrapment. And so I have to tell one more quick story. My uncle was an ADA in New York City, and I was just a kid. We went into a case that he was prosecuting, and the defense pled entrapment. And he said, ladies and gentlemen, in our country, we have this idea of entrapment. It is illegal for the police to lure somebody into committing a crime. It's illegal for them to trick somebody committing a crime and then arresting them. And that's what happened here. Just like the serpent lured Eve into eating the apple. If the serpent hadn't been there, Eve would not have eaten the apple, and that is not okay. So you must acquit my client. And my uncle got up. He said, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, did God buy that defense? No, he did not. And neither will you. Exile this person out of the Garden of Eden and send them to jail. Sorry to hear that. But
that's pretty good.
But yeah, it was astonishingly funny at the time when I heard it too. But that was one of the things that always just struck me as, I do truly believe that institutionalized religion is an oxymoron. The idea that, there is a large body that gets to say, okay, this is the factory of faith, that, we all go to work in the factory of faith and we produce whatever. Sharing your individual relationship with somebody else, that is a spiritual aspect unto itself. To give somebody your testimony, that's a big deal. But the idea that, there is this, somebody takes the time to consider what they know about religion and what they know about their relationship with a creator, and then comes to the conclusion, and that means you're damned to hell. I've never understood that.
Yeah, so it's a funny concept, because this is another one that I'm kind of unlearning, and it's this concept of sin. Those who speak Spanish, sin, without, you are missing something, right? So this sin, we think of it as, what did you do, right? What did you do? That's what a sin is. No, sin is what you are lacking. The problem is now that's not to say there aren't evil things. If you cheat on your spouse, you've done an evil thing, right? Like Christ reinforced this. This isn't one of those. A lot of people accuse people of my positions. I can justify homosexuality just fine, as people being like, oh, this guy is just trying to rewrite the entire Bible. Well, there's a handful of verses. I've gone over all of them. I can explain them all. That would take a whole other podcast. But, there's a difference between that and something like adultery, which is somebody you trust and you're cheating on them, right? And that's very explicitly, condemned. So, but what is the problem? Is when people are like, well, is adultery a sin? Well, that's not really the way it's described. You're not supposed to do it, because what it is you are without something if you commit adultery. Sin, without. I'm missing something. If I need to cheat on my spouse, I'm missing something. So when you treat a sin, it's not throw rocks at this person. I mean, Christ stopped people from doing that, right? Like stop killing people, right? That's not right. You're not supposed to do that. What you're supposed to do is say, why am I doing this? Why am I going out and cheating? If you're an alcoholic, why am I doing this? What Christians tend to do, and it's not very effective, is punish themselves every time they screw up, as opposed to build themselves. We're told we entered this world without. And I think that's very easy. We enter sinners. And when you understand sin from this concept, people are like, well, what sin did I commit? I didn't cheat on anybody yet or anything like that. No, but you're born in this state of this nature of self-serving, and it's all about me, and the world is all around me. And you need to learn to build that into something else. This isn't a shame. It's sad that Christians feel the need to wield this over like it's a shame. You are not meant to be without sin. You were put here with sin. You were put here lacking something. And you're here on this universe to learn more, to believe, to grow, to become that new creation that Christ wants you to be. This is about breaking down all that bad stuff and building it back up. And there's not a real shame in that. You know, when you're yelling at your kid for whacking it, and it's like, well, he's a teenager. What's the problem here? And what they do is they address it with blame and guilt and sin and hell, as opposed to self-worth, self-respect, community. You know, we've only started recently learning, let's talk about the drug war. We've only recently started learning that people who are on drugs don't need isolation and total disassociation. They need to be associated with healthy things. This isn't cutting them off and leaving them alone. This is bringing them in. And what's funny is people will say, well, they technically got detoxified when I just shut them in this room and left them there for 2 weeks. And technically they were. The problem is that doesn't address the sin. That doesn't address the without, right? What I am lacking. You didn't build them up. You just made it so their brain no longer craves it anymore. But what happens is you didn't fill that and build up that self-worth, that self-value. So no wonder they go out and do it again, even after they're technically clean, because they haven't been filled with goodness. And that is what Christianity is supposed to be doing. And they're unfortunately, it's becoming a rare and rare thing because politics is so addictive and it's so all encompassing. I mean, and this is not entirely on the Christian's fault. This is very intentional with the state. Right? Yep. It loves to get its fingers into every pie. There's no department you can just axe and it doesn't touch something else. And it doesn't hurt an innocent person. Oh no, there's people that work there. There's people that rely on this. Look, it's also connected with this department over here. So you can't remove that until you remove that. It wants its fingers in all of these pies. This is the state trying to infect your church. And we as Christians need to be able to say, no, this is a place of spiritual nourishment, of healing, of building up, of creating new creations that serve others, right? This place of service. If there is nothing that defines a church, it is nothing else. It is service.
Yep.
Look in the Bible. There are very few rules for church. The few rules that you do have all involve helping those in need, right? Is your church helping people in need, or is it driving people to suicide? Is it stressing people out? Is it bringing discomfort to people who are sick and sad? Because then you are not the body of Christ. You are actually doing the opposite of what the body of Christ did while he was on this earth.
And I think one of the big things that government makes government feel threatened by religion, especially in the United States. I'll just wrap this up and we get to the quiz.
Oh, yeah, you're good.
But if you look in the United States, we have really good religious tolerance of each other, right? We don't have, if you compare the way, as they say in Iran, if you're not Sunni, you're Shiite, or battles between Sikhs and Hindus, or, Wahhabis, or Orthodox and Reformed Jews, all these things where they fight. But in the United States, we've had this idea that all the religions pretty much coexist together. And I think the thing that government hates is the idea that these people with differences have learned to coexist, because if Republicans and Democrats and libertarians could learn that level of coexisting and say, you know what, let the Catholics do their things, let the Shakers do their thing, let the Zoroastrians do their thing, right? If we did that same thing at the political level, it would be terrible for government as we know it, but it would be awesome for the human beings who live here. And so sometimes I think that government fears the what religion might do. And to a certain extent, we can talk about it, right? Karl Marx said, religion is the opiate of the masses. Now that we know a lot more about opiates, we really get everything about that statement.
Yeah, we know an awful lot more about Marx too, so heck with him.
Yeah.
Just because I feel that it's a good conclusion. Like, I just want anybody listening to this, now that we're wrapping up the religious segment, if you are in a church and it is preaching like division from your neighbor, that's really a sign to get out, and it's scary to get out. And I can tell you that, done it firsthand, and it is, tear-inducing terror, right? And you may be worried about your soul. If that's you, I just want to encourage you. This is not the end of your faith. I have begun, as people have noticed, I've begun studying more, talking more, following more. And a lot of times you hear people say the things that I'm saying, and it's a sign that they're falling out. Like they're just hop skipping away from atheism and they're leaving. Never been further away from it. if anything, more affirmed in my faith that I was before. If your boat has a hole in it, don't pretend there's no hole. Fix the hole or get a new boat. If they don't let you fix the hole, then they've made the choice for you. Get the new boat. And that's the way to do. That's the way to keep yourself safe.
And if you're watching and don't follow Hodey on Facebook, definitely worth the follow. You know, I won't say that I'm expressly a person of specific faith. I would couch myself as atheist with the idea that there is there's probably a supreme being beyond the universe that I just can't comprehend. That's my personal idea. But Hodey just drops the spiritual nuggets all over the place, man. It's beautiful stuff, and definitely well worth the follow.
Thanks, Dave. I appreciate that. Enjoy your time in hell, by the way.
Thanks, man. I have a Lake of Fireside DACA already picked out and ready to go.
Oh, and the band is going to be amazing.
Yeah. You didn't know God's exact first name and last name, Dave, so unfortunately you didn't make the cut. God is for only people who knew exactly which one.
All right, so we are now at the time of the CNN Weekly News Quiz, dropped on Thursday. So if you looked at it ahead of time, you're cheating, but that's fine. I don't mind. Last week we went 10 for 10, so let's see if we can do it again. Question number 1: grocery prices in the United States increased by more than 13% on average over the last 12 months. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which item showed one of the largest price spikes? Bacon, milk, rice, or eggs? And this one's gonna be a tough one for me.
It's bacon. Oh no, wait, it's eggs.
Yeah, the avian flu just went through. It's got to be eggs.
All right, let's check it. Yes, it is. Cost of eggs jumped 38% over the last 12 months. Prices for other goods have also increased. Flour is up 22.7%, chicken 17.6%, milk 15.6%, ground beef 9.7%, and bacon 9.2%. Fruits and vegetables 9.3%. So everything's getting more expensive, but they're surely are touting the price of gas lately. So
my wages haven't increased by those percentages. Is that a concern? Is that something I should worry about?
Yes.
One of the interesting things is that, you know, the eggs at the high end have not increased as much. Not that that's a compensation, but it is astonishing to me that you can buy a dozen eggs for anywhere between $2 and $7, depending on which kind of eggs you want.
Yeah.
Leave it to Dan, who buys the fancy eggs.
Yeah.
What
bougie?
I confess we do buy bougie eggs, but there's a farm near here, and they just have a cooler out front. You put in $5 and you take out eggs. Take out a dozen eggs.
Well, what bacon do you get? Because bacon was important. I remember from the beginning of the show.
I tend to get the store brand thick bacon, and I only buy it on sale.
Dummy thick.
The only way I make it is baked in the oven.
Really?
Okay. Do you do it on a rack to get the grease out?
I do it actually. I have a giant flat. No, I want the grease in.
Oh, there
I
you
have
go.
a giant flat skittle that normally you would use for or skillet that normally you would use for like pancakes or something like that. I'll put that in the oven. It just barely fits, and it's got a little bit of a lip in it. So some of the grease runs off to the side, but the bacon bakes flat. I can fit a whole bag in at once, and it's awesome.
There you go, man. All right, question number 2. The FBI executed a search warrant at former President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate as part of an investigation into the handling of presidential documents. Where is Mar-a-Lago located? This is the
Xanadu.
Uranus.
Palm Beach, New Jersey.
In Xanadu did Kubla Khan a stately pleasure dome erect.
Well, Uranus, technically known as Florida. Yeah, Trump's Mar-a-Lago. Mar-a-Lago is in Palm Beach.
Should we talk about this a little bit?
Let's get to the end of the quiz and we'll dive into that. Jersey worn by At number 3, a jersey worn by basketball legend Michael Jordan during one of the most famous seasons in his NBA career is headed to auction. How much do experts expect it will fetch?
5 million.
55,000, 150,000, 1 million, or 5 million?
I love
I'm gonna
sports.
guess
I
high
gotta go
end.
high because this is his
Yeah.
1998 Last Dance jersey in question.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't know, but I think because the Last Dance got produced, it may have gone from the first one and now is the last one.
Yeah, I agree. I think I would go with the top number.
5. All right.
1
so
million wouldn't surprise me, but
yeah, I don't. Who knows?
world-renowned basketball expert AJ, what do you say?
Sports fans will pay a lot of money for bullshit, so I say 5 million.
all right. There you go.
Called out.
That's
It
science
hurts.
right there. Yep.
It
That is
hurts.
right.
It hurts worse now that she's right.
Mm.
You're welcome.
I'm one of those people who pay a lot of money for bullshit. Not that much money, though. That's for damn
Yep.
sure. Question number 4. The governor of Texas began sending buses carrying migrants to Washington, D.C. earlier this year as an affront to the Biden administration's immigration policies. Which additional city did he recently designate as a drop-off location?
It's the same place where they make salsa.
New
York City.
New York City.
I'm glad y'all
New York,
are
yes. You have a consensus
Yes.
panel on this one.
All right. Correctamundo. We are 4 for 4. Abbott designated New York as a drop-off location for migrants as part of his response to the Biden administration's open border policies. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what, though?
Yeah.
I got to say, I don't think Abbott is wrong on this. I mean, expecting the southern border states to bear the financial cost of all these things. Why? What's the difference between having people in Texas and in New York? You know, I was down in Deming, New Mexico, just over the border from Paloma. And there was a group of people who were voluntarily taking those who had been granted asylum and putting them on buses and shipping them to wherever their destination was.
But what I mean, the difference here for me is that those people were being asked, "Hey, where do you want to go?" Like this is just you're going to New York City or you're going to Washington D.C. and who gives a crap where you want to go?
They can still be asked those things in New York City or Washington D.C.
So wait,
it's an additional expense, though.
I'm
is
a
an
little
additional
bit
expense,
confused.
which Texas is paying, as opposed to, you know, having to keep people. I mean, if the federal government is going to have this border, this program, and require the states to maintain it, that's an unfunded mandate. I don't think it's unreasonable for them to say, you know what, every state should be bearing this burden, not just the border states.
I think the explanation is bad. Biden doesn't have an open border policy. And in fact,
That's
it
true.
is worse now than under Trump. So that's something for you lefties to wrap your brain around there. But I will say, I agree, Dan, that there's no problem. If you think, and especially the people he's dropping it off to, they're like, oh yeah, migrants are such a positive for this economy. Okay, show me. You know, like here you go. You're welcome. I'm dropping them off. Now they should be, but we'd have to make a lot of changes to make that transition a little easier.
Yeah. I mean, the Biden, all he did was change the names of things, so it wasn't like he changed the policy all that tremendously at all. So,
Yeah.
He's got a new facility though, Dave, with concrete and plastic.
Yes. New improved with Kung Fu action grip. All right, question number 5. Hollywood icons join fans worldwide this week to mourn the loss of singer and actress Olivia Newton-John. Which blockbuster movie catapulted her to superstardom? Dirty Dancing, Grease, Footloose, or Flashdance?
I got chills.
They didn't put Xanadu on.
And I'm losing control.
Yeah, they didn't put Xanadu on here. I mean, at least put like 2 of her movies.
Is this our karaoke, Dan? Is this it?
I mean, it's such a great duet that we could certainly do Summer Lovin', or we could do, yeah, exactly. Either one. There's some good stuff in Grease.
Yeah.
Okay. Only with you, like nobody else ever. Just
I'm
you.
ready. I'm ready.
All right.
All right. So, yep, biggest pop stars of the 70s, charm generations with the movie Grease. Yeah, it was a sad story. I definitely, as a young man had a thing for Olivia Newton-John.
She beat breast cancer for 30 years, and
Yeah.
then spinal cancer. It's like, oh,
Yeah. I mean,
can't you leave her alone? God,
Yeah.
we're supposed to be in So in Touch here. Can't leave her alone.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, she haunted my teenage dreams. We talked about reasons why I couldn't be an atheist. Olivia Newton-John, way up there.
Didn't they? Was that true to that her pants had to get sewn around her? I heard that for the black pants at the end.
Black pants at the ending scene at the carnival. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those had to be sewn on.
Yeah. Okay. I knew that I wasn't.
Yeah. She didn't drink the whole day.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's dedication to the art. All right, question number 6. Supermarkets in France are struggling to stock which condiment, sparking outrage across the country? Ketchup, Nutella, mustard, or sriracha?
I haven't heard this, but I'm going to guess sriracha. Just because the French are secretly terrible racists. And I can see them, for whatever reason, not having a pipeline to get that. Mustard, Nutella, ketchup. I mean,
Nutella is a big thing in France.
It is. It is.
Big
And
thing in all Europe.
I mean, ketchup, I can see them hating ketchup because it's American, but I don't think they'd have a problem getting it. My guess is going to be sriracha.
I'm going to go
Didn't we have a shortage here of sriracha recently?
We did. That's true. I remember that. I got to go mustard. I believe that's the crop grown in the Ukraine. And
all right. Well, if Hodey has knowledge of this, I would defer to him.
AJ, what do you say?
All right.
Oh no, that's way too much pressure. Maybe it's Nutella. Never mind.
Hey, and remember, it's Grey Poupon, so
Right, Grey Poupon and Dijon, right? The
Dijon.
Yes.
Yay! Good job.
Hey, we had faith, Hodey. See?
Thank you.
That's right.
Yeah, the most famous condiment. Of course, I knew that. Of course. Of course.
Number 7. Which automaker is offering to buy back one of their electric SUV models from hundreds of vehicle owners after issuing a warning that its wheels could fall off? The wheels on the bus go.
Let's go.
I'm going to say, I think it's got to be either BMW or Ford. And my guess would be BMW, because I don't think Toyota doesn't make an electric SUV. They make a hybrid. I don't think they make an electric one. And I don't think Ford's released an electric version yet. But again, if somebody knows something, I'll defer. But also, BMW is notorious for making shitty cars.
Yeah. We actually got a call on our regular Toyota. We drive a Corolla here, and apparently there's something wrong with our model, so we need to bring it in and have it for free, of course, redone, because I need the letters to stop at some point, so I have to take it to the dealership. And while we were there, they were actually talking about this. I guess they have a brand new electric SUV, and it is not going well because the wheels fall off. But
Toyota,
yeah.
Well, then
it's like an
appealing Toyota.
SR7W. It's not like a fun like Accelera name. It's a weird,
interesting. I do remember that Toyota, when they had that brake failure problem, they had the unfortunate ad campaign going of Toyota, there's no stopping us.
All right, so we're good on Toyota.
Yeah,
Sure.
we're going Toyota.
All right.
If it's not,
Wow.
I got the letters very wrong, but
the
That
BZ4X.
is so not attractive.
Yeah, I would not buy a car with a BZ4X.
The wheels could fall off while driving. I mean, how is that possible?
I don't know. I
I
mean,
was thinking the same thing. Like you lug nut the things on there, right?
yeah.
I got to think if a wheel comes off, it's coming off with the part of the axle it's attached to, right?
Right.
I mean, wheels do come off. I mean, that's not unheard of, but
wheels come off because people aren't tightening lug nuts or something like that.
yeah,
You certainly wouldn't expect on a new car, because you traditionally, right, the lug nut is it's zoop, whatever, the electric hammer.
it might be a design failure with the lug nuts itself, so that they loosen automatically as the car drives.
Like something shakes.
Right. It could be something too. The electric cars traditionally have, or often will have a motor for each wheel. And so maybe there's something about the stress of where the motor is, something like that.
Yeah,
Guess we'll have to look it up.
All right, question number 8. Approximately how many positive monkeypox cases are in the United States as of this week? 10,000, 100,000, 50,000, or 500,000? I don't think it's the 500,000.
It's low.
I think it's 50. If
I feel like it's 50, but I don't know where I got the number from. So
Unlike y'all, I was already vaccinated against it because I'm old and I had the smallpox vaccine. The smallpox vaccine is 85% effective against monkeypox.
Oh, for
there you
real.
go.
so you
Good
can go
on
to
you.
festivals and be like frolic naked with people. Good for you, man. Good, live your life.
And that's what I do. Although, I mean, really, it's mostly monkeys I'm hanging out with, so I'm in the high risk
No
category.
judgment.
All right, so we feeling good with 50?
50 sounds good to me.
Yeah, something low.
In the middle of the road.
All right. Oh, 10,000.
I
So
blame
it
AJ
was
for this.
low. No, it was me.
I am the nurse, and I didn't know it. So
I suggested the 50, so I'll take the blame on that one.
Mhm.
So yeah, first incorrect in a couple weeks.
Oh,
10,000. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, it's. I saw
low.
an interview with a guy that had many monkeypox on his face, and it was not a fun looking virus at all.
No.
But yeah.
It's
Anyway, question number 9. Dan, probably have this one. NFL owners this week unanimously approved the sale of which football team? Seattle Seahawks, Denver Broncos, Indianapolis Colts, or Pittsburgh Steelers?
I just want to say that this team spanked the Cowboys yesterday in
It
the
did.
preseason game. Unbelievable.
Hodey probably has this one too.
Yeah, the Bolin family, and God bless the Bolins. Thank you for so much success. But the kids were not the managers that their dad were. It was time for a sale. I'm excited for anybody new ownership group, and it is the Broncos.
The
Yeah.
only thing that I don't like about it is that in the sale, the new owners are getting possession of John Elway's testicles, and I don't think that's reasonable.
Those are mine. Those were mine. Those weren't theirs to give.
All right. Question number 10. Which country declared victory against COVID-19 pandemic?
It's got to be North Korea.
Victory! Victory! United States, Ukraine, North Korea, or Spain?
I mean, unless George Bush was elected president while I wasn't awake asleep, it's going to be North Korea.
Based on their numbers, didn't they never have it? I mean, it was
Well,
the nice
but it
even
was-
zero, right?
Well, they still declared victory though.
Oh, right. I'm sure it's gotta be, right? Yeah.
Yeah, Kim Jong-un
course.
declared victory against COVID-19. Watch next week he gets COVID-19.
I tell you what, though, one of the interesting things about COVID that always struck me as odd, and I'm a 2-shot, 2-booster person, but the fact that COVID did not impact poorer countries more significantly, that's an important part of the statistics. I mean, you talk about whatever you want. They're not vaccinating on a mass scale in North Korea. And if they are, they're using the Chinese vaccine, which is, water and soy sauce. Sorry, that's a terrible thing to say.
That's a terrible joke.
But the Chinese vaccine is like 55% effective. And it is but you think of other poor regions in the country, in the world, West Bank or Kosovo, or other places that have experienced extreme. Thank you. You're 100% right, Craig. Places that have extreme poverty, but did not have extreme outcomes from COVID.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it shows that perhaps the whole isolation and all that stuff really was not the determining factor. And you're seeing countries still trying to participate in this whole zero COVID policy, especially China. Every time there's a case detected, they lock down the entire damn area. And I've heard stories of there's a resort off of, they call it China's Hawaii, this island where people are stuck on the island for 2 weeks. Then they're going to get off that island. They're going to have to go to a hotel on the mainland for 2 weeks, and then go to their home after that and quarantine for an additional amount of time. It's like, the amount of disruption to the Chinese economy, I can't believe that they're doing that. But China can make up their own numbers. So, all right. So
I'll be declaring victory soon.
Yeah. So we touched a little bit on the news quiz this week. The Federal Bureau of Investigation executed a search warrant on the home of Donald Trump. One of his many homes at the Mar-a-Lago estate in Palm Beach, Florida. Much to the consternation of a lot of Republicans, much to the glee of a lot of Democrats, and took out what turns out to be 11 boxes of documents from the residence, from wherever in the residence they found them. Possible nuclear secrets were among them. There were the documents that were classified, special handling instructions. There are so many levels to top secret documents, but these were like the top of the top, where you have to be in like a special room to view these documents and things like that.
These are like the documents that Indiana Jones brought back in the Ark of the Covenant.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Tie it all around to our religious circle thing.
I saw the news the other, on Monday night when this was being done, and I was like, I flipped on CNN because I wanted to see how gleeful they were, and MSNBC. I was disappointed that they weren't quite as gleeful. But
I don't get the people who are objecting, saying that it's Banana Republic, because it's the search warrant process is pretty straightforward, and as we learn more about it, right, there are a bunch of lawyers who signed off in June saying that all the documents were cleared. It all happened because he took the documents with him to Mar-a-Lago in the first place. And so he gave them the probable cause.
Yeah.
The right thing to do would be, you know what? When you guys want all the documents back, you come and search the house in the beginning, find all the documents that are supposed to go back, and then take them back with you. The government would have been happy to do that. Instead, we're just left with this dumb situation.
Well, this is Donald Trump. It's going to be as dramatic as possible. He is always the victim, always the toddler that's been picked on, and bless his poor little heart.
But he has huge hands. No problem there.
God, don't make me think about his hands. No, Donald Trump, he is a reality TV star. Like that was what we elected to office. That's what was there. What did we think was going to happen?
Mm-hmm.
We probably could have put anybody. What's the Jersey Shore? We probably could have put one of them in office, and it'd been just as big a disaster. What did we think was going to happen?
I don't even know about that. Perhaps
the situation, I believe, is who you're.
The situation. I think the situation would have handled the White House life a lot better than Trump.
I was looking forward to President Snooki, but anyway, I think for me, this is going to work itself out. I don't have a hard opinion on it yet, because either it's an empty raid that was done based on nothing, in which case, the Republicans are going to have a huge win and just say that Trump was getting picked on, or as what seems to be what may be the case, that he did take something that endangers a lot of people, and that's going to come out, and he's going to get in trouble. I'm just kind of waiting to see which political party I'm going to gloat over when this is done. It's going to be one or the other. I'm just not sure which.
Well, let's say it's JBH. He actually posted the warrant, and Dave Jones was like, "Hey, I need you to look at this." He goes, "You actually, I worked as a judicial commissioner with Coffee County, Tennessee for a little while." He goes, "Look at it and see what you think." And I said, "There's not a lot of room for wiggles at all with this search warrant. They're going in and they know exactly what they're going for.
Yeah.
They already knew, and everything that they carried out, that's what they had gone there for." Well, that was a very detailed.
The interesting thing that came out was that they were doing this with the assist of quote unquote insider within Mar-a-Lago. So I wonder who that person is.
Was it Baron on the Xbox?
Perhaps Ivanka, Melania. But Yeah, this is going to be interesting. I don't know where we're going to go with this. There's going to be terrible hell to pay if the Democrats, if the Biden administration, or at least Merrick Garland, went ahead with this, and there turns out to be nothing there. It doesn't sound like it,
Right.
but there will be terrible hell to pay. You'll probably see Donald Trump get reelected in 2024, and but if there's grounds to have Donald Trump in prison for 2024. You know, uh, so it'll be interesting. But we've seen backlash off of this already. There's been calls to violence. Like our former political party said buy ammo, which is always fun. But there was a guy who attacked the Cincinnati FBI office with. At some point, they said there was a long rifle, but then they also said they attacked it with like a nail gun or something like that. So I'm not really sure what the whole truth is behind what he did, but he was killed by police. There was another incident this morning at the Capitol. I think probably is not related, but just something to watch out for. There has been a rise in political violence, including this week. Former author current author Salman Rushdie was about to give a speech at the Chautauqua Institute in New York and was attacked on stage, stabbed several times, including in the neck and in the face. Looks like he's going to lose vision, but he's getting better. But hopefully, continued recovery for Mr. Rushdie. But he's been under a cloud for 30 years now.
Yeah, since
1988 with
the Satanic Verses. Is that
Yep.
the one that
Yeah,
got?
that
Yeah,
was-
because it was like the next decade he spent kind of in hiding.
Yeah, because the Ayatollah Khomeini, the first Ayatollah of Iran, issued a fatwa,
That's right.
death warrant basically against him, and died before he could take it back. The Iranian government did swear it off to an extent back in '98, but it's a difficult time because there are nuts out there that are going to continue to take Khomeini's word as law because he didn't rescind it himself. It was done by the Khatami government back in the late '90s. So
yeah, it kind of has feelings of kind of like the Jamal Khashoggi thing behind it, that when you are preaching nonviolence, violent people don't like that.
Yeah.
And so it's a tough thing. I wish him all the best. In a way, this is kind of, the last two stories are both kind of emblematic that if you are an idiot and you speak idiot things and people believe you, they can do violent, idiotic things. I don't know. I can't for sure. I guess it hasn't been disclosed yet or whatever that his attacker did this for that reason. I don't know. But
yeah,
the thing is the words that you say have impact. And we as libertarians, and I agree with this, that you are not responsible for someone else's actions, but you can certainly inspire them. And would you rather inspire people to do good, kind, peaceful things or violent, awful things? The world is not going... Libertarians are badly outnumbered. You're not going to kill your enemies to death and make them go away. If you show up and just say, let's go pound per pound, let's fight this out, you're going to lose that fight. They're just mammothly bigger than you. And so what you can do is preach goodness. That's your only solution because violence isn't going to work. Like you, David, I have kind of been taken aback by some of the... Obviously, they aren't outright calling to violence, but a dumb person is going to read this and do something violent. This is similar to like when Trump said that stuff about the Chinese virus, and people were like, he didn't say do violence against Chinese people, but it happened because idiot people do that kind of thing.
Yep.
Responsible leaders are aware of what their words mean beyond what they just said to certain people. And so you need to tell those people, no, you're going to do good things. It's not enough to just not be like, hey, I didn't technically say not to be violent. Tell people not to be violent.
Yeah. I mean, I don't often like to use him as an example, but Rush Limbaugh used to preach all the time. Words mean things, and when you put that stuff out there without context, without just as a flippant cause, and social media is really burned into this that, because it's especially like Twitter and things like that, you only have so many characters to make a point, that context is not there, so people can interpret it the way that they see it. And we're seeing more violence, and I fear for what's going to happen in the next 2 years. Well, whether the election night 2022 goes one way or the other, or what happens with the presidential election of 2024, if there's any political violence that happens during that. It's a very fragile piece that we have here. People don't understand how fragile the piece that we have as a people. It can go out of control so fast, and we're just not putting that together.
Well, have you all noticed in your local elections that things are much more intense, I guess would be the way to put it? Because I'm a very small town, and the Republicans wash us away. I mean, it's Tennessee, so obviously it's a red state anyway, but they were out in force. And I mean the mailers, and they even paid for polling for the DA candidates, because it was a big deal. But so many signs were destroyed, not just removed, not just knocked down, destroyed. Like the level of violence that was involved in some of the signs was just crazy to me. I don't know. That's been the local thing. Have y'all seen anything in your areas?
I would say yes. In fact, an election I want to put on everybody's radar is David Lasher in Maryland. The way the primaries broke, the extreme Trump candidate won on the Republican side, and the extreme AOC candidate won on the Democratic side. Neither of which got more than 32% in their primary because of the way the votes were split, though. That's how they won. There are a lot of people looking at the Libertarian, and the incumbent governor, Larry Hogan, called the Republican in the race a QAnon whack job. So David Lasher is going to be in all the debates, and people should check him out, david.lasher.com. One of the debate criterias is number of donors. So if you can find a way to give him $5, it makes a big difference. david.lasher.com.
Excellent. We'll have to have him on the show here soon. We need to wrap up here a minute. Hodey, did you have something you wanted to?
Yeah, the DNC spent $44 million on insane Republican candidates this election. Yeah. So they want the Democrats want the Republicans insane. The Republicans obviously are all too happy to oblige, because those are kind of the candidates with the highest chance of winning. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, and we talked about this a little bit last week, but that's a strategy that failed them in 2016 when they propped up Donald Trump as a presidential candidate, thinking that he would be the guy that could lose to Hillary Clinton, and paid for it so badly. But yeah, they want a few more they want a few more MTGs and Gunslinger Barbie and all the fun people that they've been electing lately. And the Democrats will only have that themselves to blame for it. So, Hodey, thank you so much for joining us this week. Where can people find you on you do a Sunday night podcast or live stream as well?
Yeah. So the best place to find me is just my name. There's not too many Hodeys out there. Hodey, last name Johns, Johns. Just find me on social media. You'll see me talking about any number of things. My profession is I am a writer for a video game outlet. So I talk a lot about video games, and I talk a lot about writing. I am a Liberty lover, and so you will hear me talk about Liberty a lot because I love it to death and I can't stop talking about it. I'm a big barbecue guy, so you'll get usually a picture every couple of weeks about the latest barbecue that I've been doing. And then, of course, my faith journey and some discussions there. So if what you're interested in is faith, and please leave me some questions, comments, whatever you got. Believe me, I've been a skeptic, doubter, whatever you had before. I've certainly probably come across it. Like I said, between the speech and debate and the political and religious spheres that I've been in, I've come across quite a bit of controversy. So whatever you're feeling or confused about, you're not alone. Hit me up. We'll talk. It's fun.
That is crazy because, Hodey and I are very similar. I used to be a speech and debate nerd in high school.
Nice.
I did that for many years. But seriously, it's been great having you on the show. definitely want to have you on again because you are one of those voices that I trust in the movement. And so, but anyway, next week we are going to have Keystone candidate for governor, Joe Solosky, on to talk about his campaign. He just made the ballot. So he's confirmed to be on the ballot for the 2022 election for governor of Pennsylvania, and talking about starting a brand new party and getting it off the ground and having so much success, ballot access success, right off the get-go. So anyway, thanks everyone for joining us this week, and we will talk to everyone next week. Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.